So what the hell is going on with Nicolas Jackson? That I think kind of has to be the big talking point and the big question mark over this show. I did hint in my Fulham review that I uploaded only a couple of hours ago that I'd probably have to make another show today to cover everything over this weekend, because today's been mental, really, especially the afternoon, especially post-Fulham with all of the Jackson stuff. And not just the Jackson stuff. We've got apparently a bid going in for Fermin Lopez of Barcelona. But also, of course, Alejandro Garnacho was announced as a Chelsea player after attending the match. But that really, I think it says so much about Chelsea. So Chelsea, but also specifically this day in the transfer window, that Garnacho being announced as a Chelsea player is not even in like the top three stories, most important stories for Chelsea today. And I don't even think Chelsea beating Fulham 2-0 is one of those three stories, which is just insane. So we're going to break all of that down. Please like, subscribe, give me your thoughts on everything in the comments below. Check out my review of the Fulham game. We will be doing more post-Fulham analysis on Sunday, along with probably more stuff in the transfer window. It's very hard to keep up, and I have to say I'll be quite relieved as a content creator once we are out of the summer transfer window, because it is very manic. But this is a particularly bizarre day. So Nicolas Jackson, this morning when I was making my way down to the bridge to watch the Fulham game, it seemed basically set in stone that Nicolas Jackson was going to be a Bayern Munich player. A loan with potentially an obligation to buy was effectively signed, sealed and delivered. That was going to be the end of the story, maybe the end of Jackson's whole Chelsea career. We then get to the Fulham game. Liam Delap gets injured in the first half. Post-game, we find out that Liam Delap is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And Maresca is even asked directly about maybe Jackson's loan being cancelled. But even at that point, I think it kind of felt like something that would be unlikely to happen. I mean, he's flying out to Munich. All of that seems to be settled. But then David Ornstein breaks the news, as I was literally on my way back, that Chelsea have informed Bayern they will not be proceeding with the loan, sparking mass kind of chaos from this point on. Nazar Kinsella reporting along with others that Chelsea then withdrew their permission for Jackson to have a medical in Munich. He is under contract and required to return despite permission given to fly on a private jet to complete a deal. And then Matt Law reported that Chelsea insists that Jackson is required to return from Germany, no longer has the permission to undergo that medical, just kind of backing it up. Now, at the time of recording, which is 20 to 9 in UK time, there are still reports that Jackson is still out in Munich and he isn't on a flight back to London. And there's still chatter from his agent, from the players' camp, that they are trying and Bayern are trying to make something happen. So maybe we could have another U-turn and Jackson ends up staying in Munich for the season. So there are so many angles to this. I'm really happy about this from a Chelsea point of view, obviously. It kind of feels, if Jackson does return and it can work out, it almost feels like the Delap injury, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, the Delap injury, whatever, is kind of saving Chelsea from their own stupidity, because I don't think that this should have ever come to this. Jackson should have never been sold. He should have never been loaned out in the first place, even with the injury situation. If that hadn't have happened, I still wouldn't have liked it. It still would have been one of those things about this transfer window that I would be concerned about. Of course, the Delap injury has really accelerated that issue and made it more of a concern, and in some ways it feels like manifesting this into reality of bringing Jackson back, and the potential that Jackson can kind of be this year's Trevor Chalobah. Now, I understand it from Jackson's point of view. I understand his fury about it, to be honest, and it's kind of the collateral damage of Chelsea's obsession with trading, mass turnover of squad players on a frequent basis, that is something that is the risk you take with Chelsea's policy. And you have to put yourself in Jackson's shoes. You know, if you're Jackson, who, you know, maybe isn't, as some people have pointed out, isn't quite in the bomb squad, but it's been quite clear for a while now that he's not really part of Chelsea's plans, and it's likely a move elsewhere is going to be a part of the summer for him. And making all of that happen before the end of this transfer window. And then you literally get this move to Bayern Munich, which is an incredible move, you know, going to top Bundesliga club, Champions League competitor as well. and you're gonna be playing in the Allianz. There is excitement obviously from the player side, and then you get all the way to Munich being happy for this new challenge, and then you're told no, you're gonna have to come back to the club that maybe didn't even want you in the first place because this injury has happened this afternoon. I could understand why Jackson. Not everyone is a Trevor Chalobah. Not everyone is going to be someone who's so dedicated to Chelsea that they can be barred from first team facilities, they can be shipped out on loan, they can be disrespected in the way Trev was, and return and become Chelsea's best centre back. Like, not everyone has the Trevor Chalobah mentality or the Trevor Chalobah kind of demeanour or kind of approach to Chelsea. Some players are going to turn around and stick two fingers up at you, and I have to say I kind of understand it. So that leaves us in a position where is this kind of relationship repairable? Jackson may, be required based on his contract to return to Stamford Bridge, but what happens when he does return to Stamford Bridge? How does that work with Enzo Maresca? How does that work with the player's commitment to Chelsea over the next 9 months? Maybe less. Maybe this could be resolved in January, and Jackson will maybe still goes in January, but they just need him before Delap returns. Or does it go another way where Jackson returns, he gets a remontada, he returns into the first team, and this kind of is a sliding doors moment for Nicolas Jackson where we thought he was going to leave and he returns and he once again establishes himself as a first team player. I think we all hope it's the latter. I think Jackson, with Joao Pedro, I think Jackson as a player, I think he's good enough to become an established first teamer at Chelsea once again, because he kind of has been that for the last 2 years. I don't understand why you want to let go a player who has averaged at least 10 Premier League goals in his first 2 seasons in English football. Whatever you say about Nicolas Jackson, and this is all I will ever come back to, that is a decent return. That's not an incredible return, but based on even recent Chelsea striker history, that is decent returns. And Delap's still adapting to life at Chelsea now. He's injured, but is he going to guarantee you that goal return this season? Jackson, I always felt it was just weird to me that we were so willing to let those goals walk out of the door, and I think you always take a major risk without understanding what you're bringing in. Is that a guarantee? Joao Pedro looks like he may be that player. But with the Champions League, with the Premier League, I think having Jackson in the squad is better than not. And when the Xavi Simons deal fell through, I think just keeping him, it establishes Joao Pedro maybe more as that number 10, and you can rotate between them. Now, again, maybe we will end this window with Jackson still at Bayern Munich. Maybe the situation is unrepairable. I mean, I can't believe that Jackson, if he does have to return to Chelsea, is just going to throw the towel in and not compete. I think it does take probably humility on Chelsea's side and probably a phone conversation or a conversation face-to-face with Enzo Maresca of that situation being resolved, because it is a farcical situation. There's no getting around it. I mean, Chelsea have been involved in many mad transfer windows and they've been involved in many mad things, but this is a wild occurrence. I mean, it really is. But for Chelsea, and I say that from a Chelsea fan point of view and as someone who rates the player, I think that you should have never let him go, and I think that having him back is a perfect solution. However, it is a tense situation, and whether it can be resolved amicably is obviously the question that needs to be answered. But yeah, absolutely wild, and I just hope that it can be resolved positively. Because Chelsea, maybe it's a lesson again. And as I say, when they have this kind of approach to transfers where players are very disposable, I tweeted about this. There's a lot of stuff about player power, and specifically regarding Alexander Isak at the moment. And I think clubs are as bad as players at times. I don't have all the sympathy for clubs all the time, because I think the way they treat some players and players they don't want, they can treat certain players that they have no interest in keeping quite badly and kind of very disposable and kind of throw them out and forget about them. But then when it happens to a player they want to keep, suddenly it's the end of the world. I think at times both parties are as bad as each other. And Nicolas Jackson, if he does return, I expect him as a supporter of Chelsea to act professionally. I would understand his frustration, but it's not going to help his case and his cause for his career if he comes back and just throws a strop for 6 months and doesn't play well, that's not going to help anyone. Because I do think he is a talented footballer, and I do think he is a striker that could still help Chelsea to a really great extent. So we will see. That is the mad story. The second big story, I guess number one is Jackson, number two is the Delap injury, number three is Fermin Lopez. Obviously, we spoke about him earlier in the week. It felt like our Barca even willing to sell. Is the player even willing to make a move? Apparently, Fabrizio Romano reporting that Chelsea have sent now an official written proposal to Barca for Lopez. Around 40 million euros has been submitted right after the Fulham game, and Chelsea just awaiting now to hear back. There was a piece by Dermot Corrigan for The Athletic, who's a Spanish football expert. I will link it down below, that really breaks down again this player, if you don't know that much about him, and why Chelsea are interested in him. And it's broken down here that he adds versatility, and sharing a creative burden with players other than Palmer has been a key aim of Chelsea's summer transfer business, and Fermin would help in this aspect. He is a smart passer, reads the game well, and his movement can create spaces for teammates such as Palmer to operate more freely. At Barcelona last term, he registered 10 assists. You kind of think if Chelsea are sending bids and proposals to sign this player, you get the sense they are gaining some sort of encouragement from the player side. I can't believe Chelsea would go through the pain and the effort of trying to buy a player if they have no sense that the player is interested in making that move. So it's one we will see develop, I'm sure, before deadline day, and whether it comes to fruition. But I want to ask you, is it even one that you think is relevant? Is it something that actually needs to happen? Because I do think that central midfield, and I know arguably Fermin Lopez is, again, a number 10, but, you look at where Joao Pedro can play, Cole Palmer can play there. It's not like we have no one who can operate in that area. And you look at the central midfield options Chelsea have, it's quite deep at this point, really. So I think there are question marks over that in terms of how, and Buonanotte is obviously, it looks like he's going to be loaned. I mean, he hasn't been announced yet, but that's another one added to the ranks. I mean, it is quite confusing at times, especially late on in the window. But give me your thoughts down in the comments below. But yeah, Garnacho being announced is probably not one of the big things today, but he has been announced, I'm sure, as you've seen, as a Chelsea player. And we will see what he does. I think during the international break, hopefully going to bring on a Man United guest to speak about him. And because as I like to do with all the signings over the window, bring people on who know a lot more about the player and have watched the player, and we can have a chat about what they could bring, positive, negative, to Stamford Bridge. And of course, there are both sides of that with Garnacho. So I'll be back again tomorrow. We'll be doing what we learned from the Fulham game. And I hope no more kind of major transfer stories. I've kind of covered it here. Listen, I think that if, I've made my point here. If Jackson stays in Bayern and kind of, it's a messy situation. It just is. But I think bringing him back is the best choice. It really is. And if you can make that happen, it was a choice. And it was a decision letting him go that should have never been made. So those are my thoughts on it. Let me know yours on everything we discussed in this show. Check out my Fulham review and all of the other content on the show, the podcast feed and all of that good stuff. And I'll see you again very soon. All the best.